Hello everyone and welcome back to the Advocate Discusses. This is the next part of the Magic the Gathering series. Now, there are a lot of different elements. Gameplay, story, setting, stuff like that. Like I mentioned before, may or may not have mentioned, rather. Let's start up with the more story-based elements. Yeah, story of the game and the different worlds and the worlds themselves, different settings that they've used. I think for the sake of this, let's just do it in that order. Let's start talking about the storylines that they use. And now, they've done so many different stories. The storyline usually determines going from the story to the gameplay, to the game itself. They usually try to work the set mechanics into the story. Like, they try to make them work together. The storylines for each set, they've had a few. Like in the older sets, like the Tempest block and the block after it, basically, like, they used to have one mega story spanning more than just one block. They don't do it anymore. They have it, one block is one story, but it does connect to the previous stories or later stories in some way, like Megabolus, a dragon. He's been around a while. He was in it first brought back in Time Spiral in that storyline. Then in the Shards of Alara, he was revealed to be the mastermind of the converging, the conflux, basically that whole event. And then stuff on Zendikar, and then all the stuff after that, Sarkin, in the case of the Zendikar block, Tezzeret, the Scars of Mirrodin. We get a core set with him. And this is an example of the connectivity between storylines. Yeah, some recent storylines. We just got done with Theros, and rest in peace, Elspeth. I've heard so many people are not happy about that. But yeah, Theros, they had the Greek mythology. It was Xenagos, literally took a planeswalker with a god complex, became a god, and was struck down. And Elspeth was struck down by Heliod, basically betrayed by Heliod, and oh yeah, did I mention spoilers? Sorry for anyone who, well, Theros has been resolved for a while, so yeah, everybody knows the storyline. And there are really some notable storylines that stick out in my mind. There is the Time Spiral block, really a good one to mention, with Khans of Tarkir right around the corner. Time Spiral was all about the time rifts and Dominaria and all the other planes just kind of meshing together. That would not have been good, so it took the aid of Teferi and so many other planeswalkers, some of which died. The the whole theme of time in that one, past, present, future. Now we got Khans of Tarkir being a time travel block, and so they've got time with both Mirrodin and Scars of Mirrodin, those two blocks. A World Made of Metal, the original Mirrodin. I'm not too familiar with that one because that was before I started playing the game, so I'm not too familiar. But Scars of Mirrodin, the Phyrexians came back and with a vengeance and corrupted Mirrodin to their own image. So that one, basically after at the end of the original Mirrodin storyline, the corruption had started and the Phyrexians just finished it. Then you got both Ravnicas, the original, which that is when I started, but I'm still not thoroughly familiar with it. Basically, you had the 10 guilds. At the end of it, basically the guilds broke out into an all-out war. The guild pact dissolved, and one of the notable elements of that, Niv Mizzet, he was involved in the fight, but he fled because he had gotten wounded in battle, from what I understand. He got wounded in battle and fled to some unknown plane and then returned to Ravnica. The guild pact had been reforged. The guilds were rebuilt in some manner. Some had new leadership. Niv Mizzet was one of the ones that came back. Niv Mizzet, Borborygmos, Isperia. They were, I think, the only three. I could be wrong. No. Yeah, basically some of the guilds had new leaders. Some of the guilds had old leaders. So, the city, different factions, and with Konzatok here, again, factions, a world divided into five factions, similar to Shards of Alara, where that was literally one world that had been split into 5 pieces, and each piece was its own faction until they reunited by the end of the block. Now, I could go on about the different storylines, but if you've been, depending on how long people have been in the game, they know about the particular storyline, like the story of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, going from the peaceful, idyllic world with the elves are all obsessed with beauty. If you're not their idea of beautiful, they will destroy you, they will kill you without mercy. But then you go to Shadowmoor, and suddenly the elves are the good guys. Everyone else is corrupted, so it's literally a mirror. I thought that was a cool concept. The world is basically thrown into a mirror. It's a dark mirror of itself all of a sudden. The only tribe that did not change was the fairies. The fairies, well, with the exception of Shadowmoor bringing back hybrid mana, the fairies, they did their same thing. They flashed in, they were tricksters, they swarmed their enemies. Yeah. With all the different storylines, of the ones I'm familiar with, I like how they do that. I play the card game for fun mainly, but I am all about, a good story. So I like how they incorporate an actual storyline into each block. And especially, with stuff like Konzatok here or Ravnica, like they're able to work some kind of war or conflict of that nature, like it's a world-changing event. Like with Konzatok here, with what we know, you have the 5 clans there, and then Fate Reforged is supposed to feature the war between the dragons, so we're going backwards in time. So the third set, I'm predicting this, it'll be Tarkir in the past, where the dragons are suddenly all over the place, and we'll see how that unfolds. I'm looking forward to it. I like that. You basically just some stories. There were some that, like the old ones, I'm not entirely familiar with. Like the one that kind of is like, Cold Snap. They used the whole From the Vault thing as a cheap way of retconning Homelands because they were just that ashamed of that set. Cold Snap. It was an interesting storyline. It was the end of the Ice Age. The Ice Age was the name of an old set. It was literally Dominaria, the plane of Dominaria, underneath an ice age, and there was those that wanted to keep the ice age and those that wanted to end the ice age. Cold Snap finally ended the ice age. Yeah, that one is kind of unless you have been playing long enough to have caught Ice Age and Alliances when they were around. So you get the first 2/3 of the storyline, and then Cold Snap is just, oh look, now I'm the conclusion. So, yeah, that's just kind of a random nitpicking thing. So, yeah, overall, Magic's had a lot of really cool storylines. And now, this is just me talking. I'm a huge fan of the fantasy fiction genre. When the books that I read, that's the main genre I like to read. Stuff that takes place in the medieval settings and stuff like that. And then you've got the random, in the terms of Magic, you got the random ones like Kamigawa. You had the Japanese mythology thrown in there, and of course Theros, Greek mythology. So it's awesome seeing them touch on that. With the Kamigawa block, it was mortals versus spirits. Theros kind of repeated that in its own way. It was kind of mortals versus gods in that case. And it turned out to being planeswalkers versus gods, like almost demigods versus gods, because face it, planeswalkers, they are as close to a sort of deity. Like that's the reason why Elspeth was betrayed. Heliod feared that Elspeth would ascend to godhood, much like Xenagos did, and Heliod was afraid that he would basically be dethroned by Elspeth, and he wasn't about to let that happen. And that's kind of a disappointing ending. You know, the fight is over, the hero won, but then the hero dies. Will we see Elspeth again? Maybe. If they want to bring Elspeth back, they'll find a way, but hopefully they'll make it work. Like, right now, I'm still scratching my head on why Sorin Markov is on Tarkir. Yeah, Sarkhan Vol is from Tarkir, so it makes sense having him back. But why the heck is Sorin Markov there? It made sense it made sense for him to be on Innistrad because he was, as his card in Dark Ascension states, Lord of Innistrad. He created Avacyn as a protector. But I'm not really seeing why he's on Tarkir. Hopefully they'll answer that. Yeah. One of those things that it's one of those things that's one of those things I'm going to say I'm not seeing it. That's going to be one of those on my personal list. One of those I will reserve full judgment until I am aware of what they're doing with it, but in the meantime, I'm like, huh? No. Yeah. From the looks of it, going into some miscellaneous comments I have here, some things I wouldn't mind seeing. Now, I know they have their own ideas, but I like to see more of the, I don't know, I like the idea of mortals versus deities, Kamigawa, Theros, both of those, and I wouldn't mind seeing more stuff like that. I'm kind of curious to see how they work the whole theme, the Khans of Tarkir theme of the colorless matters. If we see a reprint of Ghostfire from Future Sight, that card from Future Sight, and maybe see a full cycle of stuff like that. Colorless spells with colored mana cost, or if we see more stuff like in Rise of the Eldrazi, colorless things that are not artifacts. But in the meantime, you just stick with your morph creatures and your artifact creatures and your Eldrazi's. And time, when they the stuff with time, the time spiral block and now Khans of Tarkir block, yeah, and going from the casual player and me, I like the multicolor blocks because they are very commander friendly. Shards of Alara, both Ravnikas, now we got Khans of Tarkir. All of the commander decks I have are multicolored. I have some 2-color decks and some 3-color decks, and I also have a 5-color deck. And it is about time they made a wedge base. They made the wedge base counterpart to Shards of Alara. And multicolored decks in general, just yeah. Now, translating that to a storyline perspective, I like the idea of factions. Multiple factions, just they all have clashing ideas, and yeah, I just like reading the stories about some kind of war. I also like reading about the kinds of stories where there's a quest of some kind. There's a character, like one of the things I'm familiar with the original Mirrodin, it was Glissa Sunspeaker, an elf that was native to Mirrodin. She was on a quest with some other characters. Of course, it ends with her being corrupted. She comes back in Scars of Mirrodin, and actually Mirrodin Besieged, she has been turned basically into one of the Phyrexian spies in that sense, where she has betrayed her home. Yeah, it was a little twister. Well, sometimes you see them coming and then it's not so interesting, but when you don't expect it, it can be kind of cool. So, yeah, another thing I wouldn't mind seeing is more of those storyline twists, more plot twists like that. Wizards is good at making those happen. For the most part, they're good at doing those well. So, keep up with that. Now, the Khans of Tarkir pre-release is this weekend, so shifting gears, I'm looking forward to that. I'm not really sure what clan I'll be in the pre-release. I'll just pick and choose. Pick one, and yeah, it'll probably be one that I haven't built a commander deck around yet. Because I already have black, green, white, and black, red, white. My black, green, white is Tenebri Animator. My black, red, white is Kalia the Vast, Angels, Demons, Dragons. I got the pre-constructed deck and modified it. Yeah. So, yeah, good luck to anyone playing in the pre-release. Until the next video, Advocate of Pants, signing off.